Frank Henderson shifted his car into park and stared at the modest, single-story house he had called home for the past 15 years. The late afternoon sun bathed the driveway in warm hues, and the inside lights of the house glowed invitingly. He was tired after a day at the office, but he caught himself smiling at the thought of seeing his daughter Maya, who had turned 20 not long ago. She was finishing up an online design course and had been immersed in a whirlwind of projects for months. He grabbed his briefcase and stepped out of his car, wishing he had better fashion sense. He always wore slightly baggy pants, a plain button-up shirt, and a pair of comfortable but nondescript shoes. Compared to Maya, who had a flair for color and bold shapes, his style felt mundane. Still, her passion for design brought a sense of liveliness and inspiration to the house that he would never trade for anything. When he entered, he nearly tripped over a scattered pile of fabric on the living room floor. Rolls of colorful material spilled out of a large plastic bin, covering half the rug. Discarded sketches, safety pins, and measuring tapes were arranged in a chaotic pattern near the couch. "You're home," Maya's voice floated out from the dining area. "Can you be careful around the satin, Dad? I need that unwrinkled for the top I'm planning." He carefully nudged the fabrics aside with his foot and made his way to the dining table, which was now serving as Maya's makeshift studio. It was littered with spools of thread, paper patterns, and half-finished garments. A brand-new sewing machine sat near the center, whirring softly in demonstration mode. Maya, tall and vibrant, with a bright smile and boundless creative energy, looked up from her latest design project. Her curly hair was pinned on top of her head in a messy bun, and she wore an oversized hoodie that bore colorful patches she had added herself. The combination of her big, thoughtful eyes and her determined, almost always excited expression had become a hallmark of her personality. Frank grinned at her. "I see it's creative chaos in here again." "It's not chaos," she replied with an easy laugh. "It's a masterpiece in progress." He set his briefcase aside. "Did you eat?" he asked, trying to sound paternal and concerned. She waved a hand airily. "I had a sandwich a few hours ago. Besides, who can focus on food when there's so much to do? I have this new design concept, and I need to see how the fabric drapes on a body. I have to make sure the lines I've drawn actually look good in 3 dimensions." Frank nodded, rolling up the sleeves of his shirt. He understood how serious Maya was about her passion. It was one of the main ways she expressed herself. Designing was no mere hobby for her. It had become her life. "You need a model, right?" he asked. "Are you still planning to call your friend Alicia?" Maya let out an exasperated breath. "Alicia's busy all weekend with her dance practice, and I don't have money to pay any of the professional ones. The campus volunteers are all either too short or out of town." She stretched her arms above her head. "I keep wishing I had a full-sized adjustable mannequin, but I've looked around, and they're way over my budget." Frank's gaze flicked to a soft, rose-pink piece of fabric that hung from the back of a chair. Maya planned on making a form-fitting dress out of it, a silhouette that definitely needed a tall model so she could see how it moved from shoulders to hem. She had joked before about needing someone tall, but it had never gone further than that. Now, as he listened to her talking about her next piece, he remembered that day's conversation where she had dramatically bemoaned her lack of a tall person to drape. Then she had teased him about stepping in as a stand-in. He had laughed it off, but in this moment he thought, maybe I can help her, even if it's awkward. He drew a breath and said hesitantly, "You know, if you really just need someone to stand there, I could maybe help." He expected her to laugh again or jokingly pat him on the shoulder. Instead, her eyes lit up. "Dad, that'd be amazing." She clasped her hands. "Wait, really?" Frank gave a modest shrug. "Sure," he said, though inwardly he felt his stomach twist with nerves. "I don't know the first thing about modeling or anything like that. But if standing still is all you need, I can do that." She let out a delighted exhale. "Yes, just wait here." She bounded to her bedroom, returning moments later with that pink fabric in her arms, along with some pins, a measuring tape, and a chalk pencil. "I had you in mind when I measured the piece," she said, still excited. "I need to see how it falls on someone around your height. You're taller than me, even with my boots on." Frank eyed the length of shimmering pink cloth. He realized it was a style intended for a woman's shape, but he didn't want to back out now. She was so enthusiastic, and he had promised to help. "All right," he said, stepping back so that she had space. "Do your thing. Just let me know how I can stand or pose or whatever." She gestured for him to take off his shirt and undershirt so she could see how the draped fabric fit across shoulders and chest. "Don't worry," she said, seeing the hint of embarrassment in his eyes. "I just need to see the shape. It's purely practical." He swallowed hard, trying not to let the awkwardness overshadow the chance to bond with her. In a moment of resolve, he set aside his undershirt, leaving himself in his jeans. Maya was all business as she worked. She carefully wrapped the pink cloth across his torso, draping it from his shoulder and letting it hang down to his hips. She muttered to herself as she pinned corners and pulled the cloth taut. "You okay?" she asked, noticing him tense up once or twice when the pins came close to his skin. He gave a small laugh. "I'm fine," he assured her. "Just don't poke me too hard." She giggled in response, stepping around him. "I won't. I've had enough practice with Alicia and my friends." He spent the next 20 minutes standing there as Maya pinned, unpinned, redraped, and stepped back to observe the silhouette from every angle. Frank felt each brush of fabric more intensely than he expected. The satin was smooth, and he was surprised by how light and airy it felt against his skin. "There," Maya eventually said, hands on her hips. "I have a rough idea of what it's going to look like. I'll sew it together, and then we can do a second fitting tomorrow, if that's all right with you." He couldn't help smiling back at her determined expression. "Yeah," he agreed. "Tomorrow sounds good." Maya grinned, carefully unpinned the cloth, and folded it, her mind clearly buzzing with ideas. "I'm going to do a quick outline on the sewing machine," she announced. "Go do whatever you need to do, Dad. Thank you for helping." He slipped his shirt back on, feeling a bit flushed, though he wasn't entirely sure why. It was only an innocent fitting, but his heart was pounding with a strange excitement that he couldn't quite name. The sensation of that satin had left an impression. He retreated to the kitchen to make a simple dinner for them, grilled chicken with a side of veggies. While cooking, he kept glancing toward the dining table where Maya had set up the machine and was now carefully stitching the dress together. Each time the needle moved through the cloth, a part of him felt curious. He wondered what it would look like when finished, but he pushed those thoughts aside. The day had been long and he was hungry. They ate quickly, Maya practically bouncing in her seat from the creative adrenaline. She talked excitedly about her upcoming design projects, a jacket made of patchwork denim, a reimagined unisex vest, and a line of clothing that she hoped would speak to people who liked bold shapes and bright colors. Frank listened, tossing in a supportive comment whenever appropriate. That night, after Maya went to bed, Frank found himself in the living room with the TV on, but he couldn't focus on the program. His mind circled back to that moment, standing in the dining room with pink satin draped across his frame. He felt both unsettled and intrigued. He told himself it was a silly thought, just fatherly pride in helping his child. Maybe so. Yet a small part of him kept picturing how it felt to wear something so different from the clothes he usually owned. Eventually, he turned off the TV and headed to bed, hoping tomorrow would settle the restless energy that buzzed in him. The next day, Frank woke early, made breakfast for Maya, and left for work, letting her sleep in. He spent the morning at his desk going through sales reports, but whenever he had a quiet moment, He wondered how the final piece would look. True to her word, Maya texted him around noon. "Finish the dress. You can try it on tonight if you're still up for helping me out. This time we'll do zippers and maybe a quick walk. That cool?" He stared at his phone with slight apprehension. A quick walk? She wanted him to model the piece? He texted back an awkward, "Sure, if you really need me," and tried to focus on finishing his tasks. The ride home was filled with a mixture of excitement and discomfort. When he stepped inside, the house smelled like fresh coffee. Maya was perched on a stool near the kitchen counter, the pink dress folded neatly over a chair. She beamed at him. "I can't wait for you to see the final version on you. I did some creative adjustments. You're taller than I realized, so the hemline is going to have a drop tail effect. I think it's going to look really cool." Frank set down his keys. "Just promise me you won't take any pictures," he said lightly. "Not sure the world needs to see me like that." She nodded, though the grin on her face remained. "It'll just be for me, so I know how it looks in motion." He went to change into comfortable pants and a t-shirt, then came back to find the pink dress in her hands. "Okay," she announced. "Arms up. We'll zip you in from the back." He raised his arms, letting her guide the garment over his head. He felt the brush of the soft cloth again, this time cut and sewn in such a way that it hugged his shoulders and draped over his torso. The feeling was unexpectedly pleasant. Maya zipped him up. She walked around him, her eyes scanning every fold, every seam. Then she asked him to take a few steps, turn around, and walk back in her direction. He cleared his throat, feeling more exposed than he had anticipated. He walked slowly, and the hem lightly grazed the floor around his ankles. Maya nodded, satisfied. "It falls just the way I wanted," she said. "I can see that I might need to bring the side in a little, or maybe add a belt to emphasize the shape." She stroked her chin, then tapped the dress near his waist. "Hold still. I'll pin it here." Frank watched as she pinned a small fold at the side, which pulled the fabric closer to his body. It didn't just feel comfortable, it felt strangely right. He tried not to dwell on that, uncertain how to interpret any of it. After a few more minutes of fussing with pins, Maya finally stepped back and gave him a proud smile. "You're actually helping a ton. Seeing it on a real person, especially someone who's about my target height, makes such a big difference." He shrugged, arms suddenly awkward at his sides. "Happy to help. I guess, if you need someone to model again, I'm here, though I'm not sure how many dresses you're going to make me wear." Maya laughed. "Oh, it's not all dresses. I'll have to practice some other pieces. There's this jacket I'm working on that's meant to be worn by men or women, kind of oversized and boxy. Maybe that's more your style." But then she winked, adding, "Though you do look surprisingly natural in the dress." He felt a jolt in his stomach at that remark. Thanks?" He tried to laugh it off. Over the next 2 weeks, Maya threw herself into more projects. She was determined to present a mini portfolio to her design course mentors, and she figured the best way to stand out was to showcase bold, distinctive pieces. Without a proper mannequin or professional model, she turned to Frank repeatedly. Each evening, he would come home to find some new creation, a half-stitched blouse, a pair of wide-legged pants that featured exaggerated pleats, or an experiment with color blocking in a knee-length skirt. If it wasn't pinned together yet, she'd carefully drape it on him, marking where the seams should fall. He began to grow accustomed to the soft whisper of fabric sliding over his body. There was an undeniable fascination in seeing how each style changed the way he looked in the mirror. It wasn't about a desire to look feminine. It was the allure of design, color, and that gentle fluidity in clothing that he'd never experienced in his standard button-downs or t-shirts. One evening, Maya brought out a silky blue wrap dress with flared sleeves. "This is more flamboyant than the pink one," she explained. "Think of it as a statement piece." Frank, by now almost numb to the initial embarrassment, allowed her to guide his arms into the sleeves. "How do you wrap it?" he asked, genuinely curious. She looped one side across his chest and secured the sash at his waist. The skirt portion fell to just below his knees. The mirror in the hallway reflected a figure he barely recognized. A father in his early 40s, certainly, but draped in bright, regal-looking fabric that shimmered in the overhead light. He found himself marveling at the unexpected confidence he felt, overshadowing the embarrassment. Maya adjusted the sleeves. "Try taking a few steps," she instructed. "I need to see if the flare has the right amount of movement." He paced the narrow hallway, noticing how the fabric fluttered at his wrists. It was surprisingly comfortable, unlike anything he had worn before. She nodded thoughtfully. "I might leave the sleeves as is. It's dramatic, and dramatic is what sells sometimes." Then she paused, giving him a thoughtful look. "Dad, is this weird for you? You've been helping me so much, and I've just been bulldozing forward without thinking about how you feel. Sorry if it's strange." He hesitated. He wanted to be honest, but not alarm her. "It's not exactly my everyday routine," he admitted, letting out a short laugh. "But if it helps you, I don't mind. Maybe it's a little odd to realize your father is wearing dresses around the house, but it's not like we're hurting anybody, right?" Maya shook her head, relief lighting up her face. "Right. It's definitely helping. I've gotten so much further than I expected, since I can see everything right away. You're basically a living mannequin, but I appreciate you way more than any dummy." His heart warmed. He patted her shoulder. "Glad to be of service." Later that night, after Maya went to sleep, Frank stayed up, thinking again. He had discovered a new side of himself that he wasn't prepared for, something he didn't have a name for. All he knew was that wearing these garments struck him with a sense of fascination. He was still very much attracted to women, still the same man he had always been. Yet, in the private corners of his mind, he couldn't help but remember the smoothness of the cloth, or how the bold colors made him feel unexpectedly confident. A few days later, the living room was littered with more designs. In the midst of cutting fabric, Maya's eyes darted to Frank as he sipped his coffee. "Dad," she said suddenly, "could you do me a favor? I'm trying to figure out if this top is too tight in the shoulders. Could you slip it on for a moment?" Frank nodded. This request had become almost normal by now. He set his coffee down and held out his arms. The top she handed him was cropped and made of a slightly stretchy sequined material. He paused for a second, taking in the sparkles. "This is definitely the flashiest so far," he joked, sliding it on. As the garment settled on his shoulders, he felt a small tingle of excitement again. Maya quickly examined the fit, pinned a few areas, then stepped back. "This might actually fit me better if I move the seams," she said, "but I just want to see where it's restricting movement. Raise your arms." He raised his arms, and she observed the tension near the armholes. She put in another pin to mark the adjustment. "Try rotating your shoulders," she instructed. He complied, rolling them in a circle. The sequins sparkled under the lights. "It's definitely a bit snug," he noted. Maya nodded. "That's all I needed, thanks." She started unpinning it from him so he could remove it without poking himself. He gently tugged the top over his head and returned it to her. The moment was brief, but it left him with a lingering swirl of thoughts. He excused himself to his bedroom under the pretense of organizing some papers, but once in the privacy of his room, he exhaled. The quiet sense of intrigue that had been growing inside him for weeks kept stirring, and he found himself glancing at the mirror, recalling the shiny reflection of the sequined material. He tried to distract himself by organizing bills, then looking at a grocery list for the week, but the thoughts remained. Finally, he shook his head, telling himself that life was just different now that Maya was grown up and exploring her talents. Perhaps having an unusual fatherly role in that process was bound to create some new, complicated feelings. Over the next week, Maya progressed with her designs at a rapid pace, thanks to Frank's willingness to be her test model. She made pants that featured wide, flowing legs and a matching blouse with bold stripes in neon green and black. She experimented with androgynous vests, a layered skirt inspired by kimono wraps, and a jacket designed to have a futuristic look. He dutifully tried on every piece, let her measure and pin, and then watched as she refined each design into something more polished. One weekend afternoon, Maya asked if he could make a short run to the fabric store with her. She wanted to check out some discounted materials and see if there were any unusual prints available. Frank agreed, happy to spend time with her outside the house. They hopped into the car and drove to a store in a neighboring town that catered to students and professionals alike. They strolled through aisles filled with vibrant bolts of cloth, chiffon, linen, denim, velvet. Maya ran her hands over them, eyes shining. Frank followed, occasionally brushing his fingertips along a smooth or textured surface. The sheer variety was astounding. As they selected a few bolts of cloth, Maya tossed them into a shopping cart. Then she turned to him and said, "Dad, I really appreciate how supportive you've been. I don't think I'd have gotten this far without your help." He gave her a warm look. "I'm happy to see you thriving. Your passion is incredible." She left him with the cart momentarily to check out a display of new prints. As he waited for her, Frank spotted a mannequin at the end of the aisle, clearly female-shaped, dressed in a swirling blue cocktail dress. The cut of the dress reminded him of the wrap dress Maya had made him wear. He felt a curious twinge. He found himself drawn to the swirl and shimmer of the cloth, remembering the gentle swirl he had felt against his legs. He shook his head, a bit embarrassed by the vivid memory. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to see Maya approach with another roll of fabric under her arm. She caught the direction of his gaze. "That's a neat design, huh?" she said, nodding toward the mannequin. "It's inspirational to see how they display these pieces, though I like our version better." Frank stammered. "I was just looking." When they returned home, Frank helped Maya unload the fabric. She had so many projects in mind that she could hardly keep them all straight. They spent the rest of the day reorganizing her sewing area, sorting fabric scraps, and labeling them. By the time dinner rolled around, he felt unusually tired. But Maya, brimming with excitement, was already starting on a new outfit, an asymmetrical top with a diagonal hem and a layered flowing skirt that would need multiple fittings. At about 9 in the evening, when Frank was about to call it a night, Maya asked, "Do you mind one last fitting, Dad? I'm on a roll, and I'd love to get the shape pinned so I can sew it first thing in the morning." He rubbed the back of his neck, but he couldn't say no to the eager glint in her eyes. "All right, last one," he agreed. She handed him the pinned-together pieces of a skirt. It draped from the right hip down to the left ankle in a diagonal sweep. He stepped into the skirt carefully while she zipped it along the side. Next, she brought the asymmetrical top, which had one shoulder strap and one long sleeve. He felt the pins prick gently against his skin as she made quick adjustments. Each adjustment made the outfit fit him better, accentuating or smoothing certain areas. Maya stood back, squinting. "I think it's too loose around your waist. Let me tuck this in a little." She pinned the fabric, then gestured for him to step forward and back. Frank felt the soft material caress his legs. The sensation reminded him of the moment in the store when he had stared at the mannequin. Again, he was hit by how odd it was that he felt so drawn to these clothes. But he tried to keep a neutral expression, especially around Maya, who was too focused on the garment's fit to notice his inner confusion. "All right," Maya said at last. "That's it. I'll sew it tonight or in the morning. Take it off carefully. I don't want you to get stabbed by a stray pin." He stepped out of the outfit with deliberate caution, returning each piece to her. Then, giving her a quick goodnight hug, he shuffled off to his bedroom, mind swirling with new questions he wasn't sure how to answer. The next couple of weeks brought Maya to the final stretch of her design course's big evaluation. She had to present a small collection of garments. She decided on 5 pieces: the pink satin dress, the flamboyant blue wrap dress, the sequined top with matching wide-legged pants, a layered skirt with a contrasting top, and the asymmetrical outfit. She planned to bring Alicia to model a few of them, but Alicia was free only part of the time, and Maya needed photos of all 5 pieces for her portfolio. One evening, Maya was pacing the house, phone in hand, looking frazzled. "Alicia can only do 2 outfits," she said, scanning her texts. "I wanted the photos to show each garment worn by someone. I can't just photograph them on hangers." Frank, checking the mailbox in the hallway, overheard her complaints. "Is there a second friend who can help?" Maya sighed. "Everyone's busy with finals or traveling." She frowned, chewing her lip. "Could, maybe, you help with the others, Dad?" He paused. "You mean take pictures of you wearing them?" She rolled her eyes, pacing. "No, I mean actually wear them. I know it might sound weird, but I need photos of each design on a body, and the deadline is coming up. I can't keep waiting for a miracle volunteer. You already know how to fit into them, and we can keep your face out of the frame if that makes you more comfortable." He took a breath, torn. The prospect of modeling a complete outfit in front of a camera felt nerve-wracking, but Maya's words about her deadline prodded him into a reluctant agreement. "I guess so. If we don't show my face, sure. We can try." She broke into a smile that lit up her face. "Thank you. We'll do it tomorrow afternoon if you're free. Alicia's coming in the morning to model the other 2. Then we'll just power through the rest with you. You've been amazing, Dad." "Thank you." The next day, Frank helped set up a makeshift photography area in their living room. Maya draped a white sheet as a backdrop. Alicia arrived in the morning, a graceful young woman who had obviously modeled for Maya a few times. She posed easily in front of the camera while Maya snapped pictures with her phone. After about an hour, Alicia changed into the second garment and repeated the process. Just after noon, Alicia said she had to go and wished them both luck. Once she was gone, Maya looked at Frank, who was shifting from foot to foot. "Ready?" she asked gently. He nodded, exhaling. He went to his bedroom and changed into the first outfit, the pink satin dress he'd worn early in the process. Standing in front of the mirror, he felt a slight rush of nerves, noticing the way the material clung to him. He repeated to himself that he was doing this for Maya. He stepped out to the living room, and Maya gestured to the backdrop. "Okay," she said. "Stand here. I'll be mindful of not catching your face if you don't want it in the shot." She started snapping pictures, adjusting the angle of her phone. "Turn a little to the left. Good. Maybe hold your arms out slightly? Perfect." Her voice was focused and matter-of-fact, as if this were the most normal photo shoot in the world. Frank was surprised by the odd calm he began to feel. The swirl of satin, the hush in the room, and Maya's unwavering attention made the atmosphere strangely serene. There was no judgment in her eyes, only creative concentration. They repeated this process with the blue wrap dress, the sequined set, the layered skirt, and finally the asymmetrical piece. Each time, Frank would change in his bedroom, step out, stand in place while Maya directed him, and try his best to exude a steady posture. By the time they finished, they both felt exhausted. Maya lowered her phone and grinned. "I've got everything I need for the portfolio. Now I just have to pick the best shots and format them." Frank nodded, releasing a breath. "I'm glad it worked out." She walked over to him, hugging him fiercely. "Dad, you have no idea how much you've helped. I feel like I owe you big time." He patted her back. Seeing you succeed will be thanks enough. That evening, as she combed through the photos, Frank lingered in the background, occasionally peeking at her screen. She was meticulous, discarding any blurry images or any that captured too much of his face. Sometimes she paused over a shot and whispered, "That looks really good," or, "Yes, that angle is perfect." She looked more excited with each photo she confirmed for the final collection. When she was done, she let out a sigh of relief. "I'm exhausted," she admitted. "I'll go to bed soon, but I just wanted to say thanks again, Dad." He gave her a gentle smile. "Anytime, kiddo." Over the next few days, Maya finalized her portfolio and submitted it to her course mentors. She spent hours refining a brief write-up for each design, explaining her inspiration and creative choices. Frank gave her as much space as she needed, offering moral support from the kitchen or living room. Finally, the day arrived when Maya was scheduled to present her work online to her mentors in a virtual review session. He took an early lunch break from his job at home to be nearby, in case she needed a pep talk. She set up her laptop in the dining room, camera on. Her instructors appeared on screen, 2 seasoned designers and a teaching assistant. Maya walked them through each of her designs, highlighting the unique elements. Frank overheard her confident, enthusiastic tone from the living room. He couldn't help smiling. When she finished, the instructors conferred briefly, then returned to give her feedback. She nodded a lot, and he could see from her expression that their critique was constructive. "Excellent draping," he heard one mentor say. Another pointed out, "You have an eye for combining textures in ways that are fresh and thoughtful." Finally, they commended her on her resourcefulness in presenting each piece on a model, even if it wasn't a professional shoot. Her glowing smile told Frank that all her hard work had been worth it. She wrapped up the meeting, thanked them, and closed her laptop. Then she rushed into the living room, practically bouncing on her toes. "They loved it!" she exclaimed, eyes brimming with excitement. "They gave me pointers on how to refine certain details, but overall they think my collection is great. They said I've shown real promise." Frank rose from his chair, and she threw her arms around him. He returned the hug, his heart full of pride. "That's fantastic. Congratulations, Maya." She leaned back. "They gave me an invitation to submit my designs for a small student showcase in a couple of months. If I do well there, it might open some doors for me. This could be the break I've been hoping for." He brushed a tear from the corner of his eye, feeling a surge of emotion. "I'm so proud of you." They celebrated by ordering pizza, laughing and talking late into the night about the future. Maya chattered about new ideas for the showcase, how she might combine older pieces with fresh ones, or how she might experiment more boldly with color. Frank listened with genuine enthusiasm, though part of him wondered if his role as her model would continue. He didn't bring it up. A week after her presentation, life settled back into a more relaxed pace. Maya spent her days sketching or meeting friends, and Frank returned to a routine that felt oddly empty without the daily fittings. However, one afternoon, Maya approached him with a small stack of clothes in her arms. "Dad," she began, "I was going to donate these old experimental pieces. I made them when I was first learning, so they're not as refined. But I tried them on again, and they don't really fit me. I was about to throw them out, but I realized some of these might fit you better. I just wanted to ask if you wanted any of them, or if that's too weird. Forget I said anything." He glanced at the folded garments, his heart picking up speed. "What do you mean? Why would I need them?" She shrugged, looking a bit shy for once. "I noticed that you didn't seem to hate wearing some of my clothes. Sometimes you looked comfortable, or at least you were curious. I thought, well, if you liked any of them, maybe you could keep them." He froze, not knowing what to say. She seemed so earnest, so open about it. The reality was that he had found a measure of enjoyment in wearing some of those clothes, but he never expected her to notice or offer him anything. I appreciate the offer, Maya, but I'm not sure if that's something I'd do on my own. She nodded, gently placing the stack on a side table. It's okay. I just thought I'd ask before I donate them. No pressure. I'll leave them here in case you change your mind. Then she walked away, leaving him alone with a jumble of thoughts. He studied the clothes, a few skirts, a couple of loose tunic-like tops, and a half-finished dress. None of them were particularly fancy. They showed raw edges or uneven stitching, reminders of Maya's learning process. Still, he felt a subtle tug. A few days later, while Maya was out with friends, he found himself at home, restless. He passed by the side table more times than he cared to admit, until finally he stopped and picked up one of the skirts, a simple flowing piece in a soft gray knit. He glanced toward the door, ensuring he was alone. Then he carried it to his bedroom. The moment felt charged with nervous energy. He slipped out of his pants and slid into the skirt. The elastic waistband settled comfortably around his waist. He turned to face himself in the mirror, taking in the drape that ended just above his ankles. It felt gentle against his skin. He took a step, and the fabric swished lightly. There was an odd sense of calm that washed over him. Then he heard a noise. His heart pounded. But it was just the ice maker in the fridge. He forced a breath out and stared at the mirror again. He didn't entirely understand this new curiosity. He knew his romantic preferences hadn't changed. He still liked women. And he was, in general, the same dad he had always been. Yet he found a measure of solace in the quiet swirl of that skirt around his legs. He carefully removed it, folded it back up, and placed it in his closet, far in the back behind some old jackets. Part of him wanted to put it with the rest of his clothes, but he wasn't quite ready for that. Instead, he tried to push the moment from his mind. In the following days, Frank returned to his usual routine, occasionally modeling for Maya if she needed help. But now there was an unspoken understanding that he might actually enjoy it more than he let on. She never pressed the matter, trusting him to find his own way. Her biggest worry now was preparing her pieces for the upcoming student showcase. She spent many nights planning how to display her garments, how to style them, and whether she could find a few more volunteer models so she wouldn't have to rely on mannequins. Frank sometimes joked, "Well, I could come with you, but you might not want me to steal the spotlight in your designs." She would roll her eyes at the corny humor and laugh it off. The day of the showcase arrived. Maya carefully packed her garments in garment bags, made sure she had all the accessories, and double-checked every detail. Frank drove her to the event, located in a large multi-purpose hall on a nearby college campus. Young designers bustled about with mannequins, clothing racks, and notebooks. Maya found her assigned space, a modest rectangular area with a table, 2 mannequins, and a small clothes rack. She began setting up, carefully arranging her outfits. One of the volunteer models who had promised to help her had texted last minute to say she couldn't make it due to a family emergency. Maya tried to remain calm, but Frank could see the tension in her eyes. She needed at least 3 models to wear her various garments so they could be seen in motion during the brief fashion walkthrough scheduled in 2 hours. Alicia was there, ready to model 1 or 2 outfits, but that still left a gap. Maya's second volunteer, Ryan, was set to arrive soon, but she still needed a third to cover everything. Frank hovered behind her as she checked her phone for responses from potential backups. No luck. She swallowed hard and whispered, "Dad, if I can't find another person, I won't be able to show all my designs on the runway portion. I'll lose points in the judging." He looked around, seeing the busy crowd of designers and onlookers. "I could do it," he offered quietly, "but this is a public event. I'm not sure how you'd feel about that." She turned to him with grateful eyes. "I'm totally okay with it if you are. Remember, you'd be wearing the pink dress or the layered skirt, whatever you're comfortable with." Frank's heart thudded at the idea of walking on a public stage wearing one of her dresses. The little photo shoot at home was one thing. This was on a bigger stage. But he saw the desperation in her eyes. "If that's what you need, I'll do it." Her face lit up with relief. "Thank you, Dad. You're a lifesaver." He steeled himself. This was not how he had expected to spend his Saturday. But sometimes, being a supportive parent meant stepping far outside one's comfort zone. He told himself it was only a few minutes of walking, and it mattered a great deal to Maya. As the showtime approached, the hall filled with onlookers, friends, relatives, and design enthusiasts. The stage area was set up in the center, flanked by rows of chairs. Each design student had a slot of about 5 minutes for their models to walk across and showcase their clothing. Maya pulled Frank, Alicia, and Ryan aside to give them instructions. Alicia would wear the blue wrap dress, Ryan would wear the unisex jacket and trousers, Frank would wear the pink dress that had launched this entire adventure. The plan was to walk out, do a quick turn, and walk back. Backstage, Frank changed into the pink satin dress, feeling exposed in the cramped dressing area full of other participants. He avoided eye contact, focusing instead on the reality that it was just for a few minutes. Maya helped adjust the fit and pinned any loose folds. Then she gave him a light pat on the shoulder. "You good?" He swallowed. "As good as I'll ever be." He looked around at the other models in various outfits. Some edgy, some traditional, some downright avant-garde. In the swirl of bright colors, he was just another unusual piece of the puzzle. The show began, and designers one by one presented their collections. Finally, it was Maya's turn. Standing behind the curtains, Frank could see the bright lights shining on stage. Maya spoke briefly into a microphone about her inspiration and vision. Then Alicia stepped out first, modeling the bold blue dress. She glided confidently, and the crowd applauded politely. Next came Ryan, showcasing the unisex jacket and trousers. Another round of polite applause. Frank felt his heart race as he realized it was his turn. Maya gave him an encouraging nod. He took a breath and stepped onto the stage in the pink satin dress, eyes adjusting to the stage lights that shone across him. He could feel the audience's curious gazes, but he focused on his steps. The silky dress flowed around his legs, and each step reminded him of why he had found these fabrics so intriguing. He kept his expression as neutral as possible, telling himself that the audience was more focused on the garment than on him personally. He paused for a second, made a subtle pivot, and then walked back. The entire sequence lasted less than a minute, but it felt like an hour. Yet, as he moved through that stage, a strange wave of calm settled over him. He realized that, in the context of a fashion show, his presence was just another statement, a father supporting his daughter's vision. The applause he heard as he stepped back behind the curtain was proof that the audience appreciated the design, or perhaps just the show itself. When he exited, Maya was beaming. She hugged him tightly, not caring who saw. "Thank you," she whispered. "That was amazing." He managed a small, shaky laugh. "I'm just glad I didn't trip." They watched the rest of the show together. At the end, there was an informal mingling period where audience members could wander among the displays. A few people came up to Maya's table to compliment her designs. She introduced Frank as her dad, who had graciously filled in for a missing model. One older gentleman, presumably connected to the design school, smiled and said, "That's quite the supportive father you have. We need more parents like you." Frank blushed but appreciated the sentiment. By the time they got home, they were both exhausted, but a happy kind of exhausted. The show had gone well, and Maya had garnered positive attention from several visiting professionals. While changing out of the pink dress at the event, Frank had felt a pang of mixed emotions, a reminder of how wearing that dress had simultaneously thrilled and unnerved him. Now, as they sat in the living room, sipping celebratory drinks, sparkling juice for them both, Maya turned to him with shining eyes. "You've done so much for me," she said softly. Not many dads would walk a runway in a dress for their daughter's project. He shrugged, trying to hide how moved he felt. "You're my kid. I'd do anything for you." She studied his face, then gently took his hand. "I saw how hard this was for you at first, and I appreciate that you kept going. I know we don't need to talk about it if it makes you uncomfortable, but I just want you to know it's okay. Like, if there's some part of you that likes wearing certain clothes or enjoys trying something different, there's nothing wrong with that." He swallowed, feeling the emotion in his chest. Yeah, I guess it's complicated," he managed. "But I'm figuring it out. I'm still me, though, and this was mostly for you." She squeezed his hand. "I get it, but if you ever want to talk about it, I'm here. You're allowed to find your own sense of style, even if it's not what people expect." He nodded. "Thank you." They shared a moment of unspoken mutual understanding, the depth of which neither could fully articulate. A few days later, as the excitement from the showcase died down, they found themselves returning to a more ordinary routine. Yet the bond they'd forged, through countless fittings, pinned hems, zippers, and makeshift photo shoots, had evolved into something deeper. Maya had gained valuable experience, and Frank had discovered aspects of himself he never could have anticipated. One evening, as Maya worked on a fresh design, she poked her head out of her room. "Hey, Dad, I'm making a new jacket. Kinda unisex, a bit edgy. Want to help me test the fit on the shoulders?" He looked up from his book. "Sure, kiddo," he said, placing a bookmark between the pages. This time he rose with a relaxed heart. No dread, only a sense of shared purpose. She brought the half-finished jacket, carefully positioned it on him, and grabbed her measuring tape. Standing before the mirror, he saw his reflection, no longer feeling a jolt of confusion. Instead, he saw a father who, in supporting his daughter, had opened a small door in his own mind, granting him a new perspective on what clothing could be. Every piece of clothing had its own story, its own shape, and it could rest on anyone's shoulders who chose to wear it. He glanced at Maya in the mirror, who was busy adjusting the collar. He thought of all the times she had pinned and measured, never judging, only concentrating on her art. He realized he was grateful for this journey, odd though it was. It had brought them closer than any regular father-daughter activity ever could. And so, as the pins caught the fabric in place, Frank nodded to his daughter's reflection. She smiled back, finalizing the fit on the new jacket. They were a team, beyond any ordinary measure of father and child. They had forged a space of trust and creativity, one that would carry them forward into new chapters of their lives, woven with threads of understanding that only the two of them could fully recognize.
Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell. For exclusive content and early access, check out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos shown on my right. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.